Hey, welcome back to my channel. I am Dr. Neva of Nevillaince. People have been requesting information on work visas, so I decided to get the authority, the expert, to talk about it. But before we do, a little bit more about Nevillaince. Hi, I have the privilege and the honor to interview today Attorney Millicent Clarke. Millicent Clarke is an attorney with a very long resume and experience in immigration law. She's currently practicing law in her own practice, but she has 40 years of legal experience helping people with different kind of visas to get themselves sorted out in the United States. Without no further ado, let me present to you Attorney Millicent Clarke. Hello, Attorney Millicent Clarke. How are you?
I am great today. Thank you. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm so thankful that you're able to join us. Please introduce yourself to everyone worldwide.
Hello, everyone. I'm Millicent Clarke. I am an immigration attorney. I've been an immigration attorney for about 40 years now. I practiced for 17 years with the United States Department of Justice. At one point, I was the chief attorney in chief for immigration in the Eastern District of New York for the federal government. I have been in practice for the past 17 years or so, and I would love to speak to you about immigration. It's one of my great loves. Okay.
Wow, what an impressive background. I'm privileged to say I'm able to be experts like you that can dive into topics. Now, the reason I reached out to you is that I've gotten a lot of questions online asking about different topics revolving around visa. Today, I'm going to focus in a little bit on work visas. So the popular question that I always receive is, how can I get a work visa? Now it's so big, but that's the question I receive. So, what would you say to such a question?
Okay. As you mentioned, the question is particularly vague because there's so many types of work visas. I prefer to call them employment visas. Employment visas can be temporary work visas or they could be permanent work visas. The permanent work visas end up giving someone a green card, that is, you become a lawful permanent resident of the United States, able to live and work indefinitely in the United States for ultimately any employer that you wish. The temporary visas are like the H-1B visas, the H-2B, the L visa, the J visas. Those visas all give you um, the authority to work in the United States, but they're temporary visas for a limited amount of time in most instances, some instances a year, some instances 2 years, some instances 3 years. So let me speak specifically about the H-2B visa. The H-2B visa requires a college degree. If you are a STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, there are additional visas available. If you also have a master's degree, there's an additional 20,000 visas allotted if those master's visas are obtained in the United States. So
So you're saying that they have extra visas aside for individuals specifically with certain qualifications.
that's correct. Okay.
Excellent.
So the H-1B visa is oftentimes, but the problem with the H-1B visa is that there are always too many people, even with the additional visas added for the master's degree obtained in the United States, there is always too many people attempting to get those visas. And so there's always an overrun, and there are always people who do not get the visas in the end. For the past few years, they've used a lottery system so that you could, they've used the lottery system. And so now you have to, they'll tell you whether or not you made the lottery system, and then they'll go ahead and process. If you didn't make the lottery system, even though you qualify, they will go and bounce it back to the employer at the end of all this. Okay, so last year we had one that was bounced back, and this year the same company filed for someone else, and it went through and with no problem. All right, wow. So I guess they think they're being fair, because what happened in the past, the big companies and the big law firms would actually have the preference. They were able to have theirs filed maybe overnight. They go to a mailbox close by, or they go into the area and where they would be received, and just drop them in the overnight bin or whatever. But anyway, they always seem to have the upper hand, where maybe 2-3 days, sometimes a week into the filing, because you cannot file before April 1st of the year that you want to get the visa for. April 1st. Sometimes by the end of the week, the visas are gone. Okay, that's how. So now they're doing it by lottery, and it makes it a little more of a level playing field, but still, you could still qualify and not get it. That's the H-1B. The good thing about the H-1B visa is that you can renew it for another 3 years. And after you renew it for those 3 years, you can in fact have the same employer turn around and file for lawful permanent residence for you. So that would be converted at some point. It has to be done by the 5th year, or you will have to leave the United States or go into another status. So it's all very complicated, but in the end, you can get a green card based on.
But that's why they have you.
Okay, all very complicated. Okay, all right. Then, okay, so that's the H-1B. The H-2 is usually sought by, it's a visa that deals with temporary workers, mostly seasonal workers. So I have a farm and I need to pick certain crops. I may bring somebody in from Mexico or from wherever. I have a hotel business in the Hamptons or in Nantucket. I might bring people in to work, but that's seasonal work. And usually they come up and they're supposed to leave after the seasonal work is done. Usually it's a 6-month period, and they leave and they can come back. And that's another way of working, but not being really a resident of the United States, but being able to work and leave and come back another year and work and leave. Those are seasonal workers. H-2Bs, they call temporary workers. Okay. And usually you have people in the different countries, or now maybe even online, who actually interface between immigration, the attorneys, and the employers who are looking for these people. All right. Oftentimes they'll go into the country. They'll go into the country, say they'll go to Jamaica, and they're looking for people to pick apples, or, whatever, farm working, whatever. So that's the second H visa. Then we have a J visa. A J visa is a program in the United States where you're an exchange visitor. Sometimes you're allowed to work, sometimes you're not allowed to work. It depends on who you are and what program you are participating in. Again, you would go online and figure out and find someone who does this, who looks for people who are willing to have you work with them in the United States as a J visa. J visas are very tricky. Again, you don't want, if you really want to ultimately live in the United States, to live and work in the United States, and eventually maybe become a citizen of the United States, you may not want to get a J visa, because a J visa oftentimes, not always, has what is called a 2-year residency requirement to it, which means that after you finish your J visa placement in the United States, you must return to your country and stay there for at least 2 years before you can obtain any kind of visa to come back to the United States. And a lot of people don't even realize that when they get the J visa and they come to the United States and they get married, or an employer wants to sponsor them, and they don't realize that they cannot cannot adjust status in the United States without getting some kind of waiver. And in previous years, it's been very difficult. It's becoming increasingly easier to get a J visa, unless you're a physician. And then they could give you could have a hellish time if you're a physician trying to get a J visa, because the American Medical Association is a powerful lobby that does not really want a lot of foreign doctors coming in.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I thought that doctors would be welcome here, I didn't know that.
Well, they're welcome. Okay, they're welcome to a certain extent, but if you have a J visa, there's a limitation on you, and it's not easy for you to get the necessary waiver. I mean, it can be done, but it's not an easy task. Um, Also, in some instances, you can just get a no objection letter. You can just get a no objection letter from your country. Say in some instances, when people come in on a J visa, um, their government might pay for part of their room and board, or a scholarship or something that they're pursuing. Say you come to the United States and you're pursuing a PhD, and you're from a country, say someplace in Africa, and you're pursuing a PhD in math. Your country might have participated in your support, either your financial support or your room and board or whatever. It might have given you a scholarship, expecting that you will come back and make a contribution to your country after you have acquired the PhD. But you decide that you don't want to go back. You can make a lot more money in the United States. You want to live in the United States. So oftentimes the country will say, if you pay us back the money that we gave you, and maybe with interest or whatever, we will give you a no objection letter. And that makes it much easier to get a waiver if you get a no objection letter. Increasingly, there are all kinds of J visa programs that do not require do not have a requirement, a 2-year residency requirement. But when you're doing that, you should be crystal clear that it might not be worth it, because you could be here and just get stuck and it's not worth it in a lot of instances to get that J visa and come in and then get stuck, can't get a green card, and you want to stay here.
Yeah, definitely. So another question that I've gotten is, can I come to the States, then find a job, then have the employer sponsor or give me the work visa? Is that possible?
Okay, so here's the thing. Nothing is very simple. Um, okay, so you're in your country and you want to work in the United States. The question is, do you want to work temporarily? Do you want to get a green card? What is it you want? That's the first determination. If you just want to come here to work temporarily, as I said, you get an H-1B, you get an H-1B visa, you could get an H-2, you could, if you're working for a company abroad, you could get an L visa, you could get all kinds, these are all different types of visas. So you kind of have to make a decision as to what is it you want to do. The big thing is you now have to contact an employer. So you might be abroad, and you might find a company abroad that has it, and you contact that company, and your position is that you want to work in the United States for that company. There's a visa called an L visa for that. Again, there are all these entities online that you can contact to see if they can find jobs for you in the United States. Okay, now before you can get that job, of course, you're going to have to get a special work permit. And if you're outside the United States, that's ultimately done through the American embassy in that country. And if you're not if you're in the United States, then oftentimes it can be done here, but but you must be in status in order to pick up a visa here in the United States. You cannot go out of status and then think that you're going to somehow get change of status here in the United States. So if you come in as a visitor and you come in and you look around for a job, it would make sense to go outside the United States and make the application. And the applications are made. So when you come into the United States, you're ready to go. You have your green card. And it does, in most instances, it does take some time. And in the case of an actual, we call it a perm application, and that's the permanent resident application that results in a green card for you. It takes a long time. It could take up to a year and a half, even 2 years to get that. So you don't want to be caught here in an illegal status, because if you're caught in America in an illegal status, you will never pick up that green card here in the United States. So you want that to happen outside the United States, if at all possible. If it's and I say all this very, very aware of the fact that everything is about to change, and everything is probably going to change under the Biden administration. Okay,
And
so
you assume it will get a little easier? Do you believe it'll get a little easier, or it's just that the rules will change?
it will get a little easier. The rules will change to make it a little easier. The Trump administration was not playing games, okay? Every restriction and every impediment that could have been placed in people's way were placed. So now it's a new day, but as to exactly what we're dealing with, we don't know. As late as November 21st, 2019, there were changes made in an investor program, and every day in the last year, there've been this and that change, all kinds of changes being made to immigration to make it more oppressive. So we now have to just look to see what the rollback entails. Okay, let me talk a little. Okay, so perm. We talked about perm. Okay, so I spoke earlier about the non-immigrant, that is the temporary work visas, and then I spoke a little bit about perm. We have to understand what perm is. Perm gets your green card. There are a number of categories. The first one is you are a person of extraordinary merit and ability. Okay, that is what they call the Einstein visa or the genius visa. And believe it or not, that is the visa that Melania Trump used to get her green card in the United States. So it can be used for models, apparently, and just anybody who can show that they're somewhat distinguished. The problem was she was never a distinguished model. But
no comments. I'll just listen on that note.
Okay. On that note, you can edit that out. Okay.
No, I won't.
All right, and so that's the first one. But usually we get that visa for people. I've gotten it for people who are PhDs, MD PhDs, some people with master's degree who basically show that they're way above. They're like in top 10%, top 10, 2%, 10% to 10% in their field, that they stand out. Okay, and it can be done. If the person is qualified, it's a thorough an application that can be made, and it's not a difficult, tedious application to make. You just have to really make sure you make your case.
So let me ask you something. One of the things that I do, I work with international students, them to study here in the United States and Canada. Canada, it seems a little bit easier after they graduate, that they're able to file for their residency. What is the case with the US? For the most part, I've pretty much heard, well, it's usually going to be difficult, going to be difficult after. So it's the case, so they completed their bachelor's, their master's, or their PhD.
Okay. All right.
How will that work out for them to get their residency?
I got it. So again, after the person qualifies for the bachelor's, there's a period of time when after graduation, when the student can apply for what we call OPT. It's optional practical training, OPT. And in some instances, it's good for a year. In some instances, it's good for 18 months. In some instances, it's good for 2 years. Again, STEM always gets the extra time, okay, because America is always looking for STEM workers.
Right, and just to clarify, those that may not know, that means science, technology, engineering, math.
That's it, okay? All right, and America is always looking for those people. So, but you must. So, what a lot of people do is they go to these companies, and you're hired as you're an OPT. When your OPT expires, then the question is the company going to apply for you as an H-1B? And most companies do. I should say a lot of companies do, and some of them don't. Some of them are not in the position to do it, and some of them will, in fact, hire you as an H-1B. It really depends on what you bring to the table and what is needed in the economy at the time. And as I said, STEM people are always needed. Teachers are always needed, especially science teachers, math teachers. Okay, so there's some people who just always will get H-1B very much easier than other people. It doesn't mean, but as I said, there's a limited amount of H-1Bs also, but you do get to do OPT, and you just have to watch out and be very careful that you do not miss your dates when you are supposed to file. The next thing I would like to talk about is your perm. The perm gets your green card, gets your green card. You can ultimately get citizenship. 5 years after you're eligible for citizenship, and you do have a green card in your hand, as I said, which allows you to work indefinitely and live indefinitely in the United States. Even though an employer might file for you, you will eventually end up not having to work for that employer. Once you go to the work, if you want to leave at some point, you can leave and go on to other employment, no problem. So you end up working for anybody you want to. You're free to live and work like any other lawful permanent resident in the United States. Okay, so we talked about the extraordinary merit and ability, and the next one is that you can get a green card if you are a person who the United States government regards as a person who basically adds to the national and make a contribution to the national interest of the United States.
Okay, I'm not seeing you.
Okay, hold on, somebody's trying. Okay. All right, so we were talking about that second, the good thing about the Einstein visa and the / Genius visa and the visa for national interest, you don't require an employer. So you're coming on your own merit. You have, as I say, you have to come gangbusters, but you come on your own merit and there's no employer required. So that's great. So the person really is, top of the crop or near top of the crop. You can actually make a good case and the person can get a green card without an employer. And it's fantastic for the people who qualify. They don't go through an awful lot, okay? And then, of course, we have members of the professions. We have EB3, EB2, EB3, EB4, EB5. All right, so the green cards, the big thing about the green cards is that the employer has to pay the fees. There are a lot of fees. There are fees involved, and the fees and even the attorney fees have to be paid by the employer. And the Labor Department is very clear that there can be no funny stuff going on. So basically the attorney has to sign a document saying he did not receive any monies from the client for filing fees. We're talking about not only filing fees, we're talking about the fees for advertising and any other fees that arise out of this filing of this perm application by the employer. It's the employer's application. Until that is approved, then then we get into the visa processing stage. But the first part of it is solely with the Labor Department. And the Labor Department is very, very clear, and everyone has to sign documents to show, the attorney has to file documents saying, I received no monies from the client for this. That is the beneficiary. The employer has to sign saying, I received no money from the person I'm applying for. Person's applying for, that is the beneficiary, has to say, I gave no money to either the attorney or to my employer in order to get this benefit. So they're very clear. So oftentimes people want to come with their this and that. No, it can be troublesome if they don't play by the rules. And as I said, it's a tedious process, but it can be done. It takes about 6 months to get to the filing, and it takes another, say right now, maybe 4 to 6 months to get it approved. But if it's all done online, but you have to the attorney has to keep a file on everything that was done, and everything has to be properly done, consistent with the regulations. And so it could be approved without the attorney, without the government ever having seen the documents, the real documents. But they could, in a second, the government could ask, that is, Labor Department could ask for an audit. And if they ask for an audit, you must have everything in place ready to be sent to them. And if there's an audit, it takes a little longer in order to get it approved. The audit could result in a grant or a denial. After that, only then would you move on to the immigration part of it with USCIS, where you will file an I-140 visa petition. The employer will file that there, and also simultaneously, you oftentimes can file what we call a 485 adjustment of status application. Again, it's your green card. All right. So I think I have covered that. If you have any questions.
Yes, you have. You've covered a great deal. And thank you so much for explaining the different options to everyone, because it's so needed, right? So your information will be listed, and there will, of course, contact Nevillaince, and definitely we refer those individuals that need questions answered directly to you. All right?
Wonderful.
Until next time, thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.